The rift opened like a wound in reality above. Metropolis at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. And Tashinori Yagi fell through it screaming. Not from fear. All Might didn't know how to be afraid anymore. Not after decades of smiling through terror, but from the agony of 1-4. All tearing against the fabric of a universe that didn't recognize quirk-based biology. The power that had been passed down through 9 generations convulsed in his cells like electricity through water, searching desperately for the vestiges of his predecessors and finding only void. The connection wasn't severed. It was distant, as though he'd been yanked millions of miles from the spiritual anchor that made 1-for-all more than just superhuman strength. He hit atmosphere at terminal velocity, somewhere over a city that looked like Tokyo had, mated with New York and birthed something impossibly vertical. Skyscrapers stretched toward clouds like titans made of glass and steel. The largest building bore a spinning globe with a single letter, a stylized S that his disoriented brain couldn't quite process. Below, on the streets of what his fragmenting consciousness would later learn was Suicide Slum, 3 men with weapons that crackled purple and black were backing a family against a wall. Intergang. The word would mean nothing to him for another 17 minutes. Right now, all Tashinori Yagi saw was a mother shielding 2 children while armed men laughed. 1-for-all ignited. His body transformed. Mid-fall, emaciated frame exploding into 250 pounds of sculpted muscle. Hollow cheeks filling with vigor. Dead eyes blazing with azure fire. The injury from All-for-One still ravaged his insides. Still limited him to mere hours of peak performance. But for this moment, Tashinori Yagi ceased to exist. There was only the symbol of peace. I am here. The declaration shattered windows 3 blocks away. All Might's fist connected, with pavement between the criminals and their victims. Channeling 1-4. All through concrete and rebar and the bedrock of this strange city. Air pressure from the impact created a shockwave that Dallas Smash had perfected, that United States of America Smash had weaponized, that Plus Ultra had transcended into art form. The street exploded upward in a perfect cylinder of destruction 40 feet wide, lifting the Intergang thugs like leaves in a hurricane while, somehow, through decades of precision and desperate heroism, leaving the family untouched in the eye of his manufactured storm. The criminals flew. Their weapons clattered to asphalt. And All Might stood at the crater's center, one arm raised in his signature victory pose, grinning with every tooth visible because that's what symbols do. They smile so civilians don't have to be afraid. Fear not, citizens. His voice boomed across Suicide Slum. And for one perfect moment, everyone stopped. Criminals froze. Civilians stared. Somewhere in an office 17 blocks north, Clark Kent looked up from his keyboard. Why? Because I am here. The family ran. Smart. All Might had trained for 30 years to make sure civilians always ran when heroes engaged. He turned to face the Intergang members struggling to their feet, weapons recharging, murder in their eyes. And his grin widened impossibly further. Then his time ran out. It shouldn't have. 3 hours. That was his limit. Carefully managed since the injury that had destroyed his stomach and respiratory system. Since All-for-One had carved out his insides and left him a dying man playing hero. But this universe's physics didn't care about his calculations. 1-for-all was drawing from his life force twice as fast here, burning through reserves he didn't have. And Tashinori felt the transformation breaking 90 minutes too early. Steam burst from his body. Muscle deflated like punctured balloons. The towering symbol of peace collapsed into a skeletal man in a shredded suit. Blood erupting from his mouth in a spray that painted the crater's edge. He hit his knees, vision swimming, and had just enough consciousness left to think. Not like this. I can't fail like this. If I fall, who will smile for them? Then a red cape filled his vision, and hands that could. Crack planets caught him with the gentleness of a father holding a newborn. I've got you. A voice said, impossibly kind, impossibly strong, impossibly certain in a way that reminded Tashinori of himself before All-for-One had taught him that symbols could bleed. You're safe now. All Might looked up through blood-stained lips at a face that belonged on Mount Olympus. Chiseled jaw, dark hair with that one perfect curl, eyes bluer than any sky Tashinori had ever defended. and a symbol on his chest that finally registered. Not an S. Hope. In some language Toshinori didn't recognize. This being wore hope as his crest. Superman. Someone in the crowd whispered, and the words spread like prayer. Oh, Toshinori thought as consciousness fled. This world already has a symbol of peace. The last thing he saw before darkness claimed him was Superman's. Expression, concern mixed with recognition, mixed with something that might have been relief or might have been worry. The last thing he heard was the alien hero's voice, cutting through the sirens and chaos, fortress, medical emergency, Kryptonian adjacent, physiology, but something's wrong with his cellular structure. I need a full analysis. Then nothing. Toshinori Yagi woke to crystalline walls and air so cold it burned his ravaged lungs. He jerked upright, old reflexes screaming threat assessment. Protect civilians, where's the danger? And immediately regretted it as pain lanced through his abdomen. The injury from All for One pulsed like a second heartbeat, reminding him that he was mortal, that he was dying, that he had no business being a hero anymore. Easy. Superman stood beside what Toshinori could only describe as a bed made of ice and light, hands raised in a gesture of peace. You're in my fortress of solitude, Arctic base. You've been unconscious for 6 hours. Toshinori's hand went to his side instinctively, found bandages he didn't remember receiving, and forced himself to breathe through the panic. 6 hours. He'd lost 6 hours in an unknown location in what was clearly an unknown world and where? His voice came out shredded, weak. The voice of Toshinori Yagi instead of All Might. He coughed, tasted blood, and tried again. Where am I? What happened to the family? The criminals. The family is safe. The criminals are in SDR labs. Custody. Superman's expression softened with what looked like approval. Your first questions are about civilians. You really are a hero. Of course I am. Toshinori croaked, confused by the statement. What else would he be? That's what heroes do. Protect people. Save lives. Smile so they don't have to be afraid. He struggled to sit fully upright, ignoring Superman's steadying hand. How long was I out? Are there other threats? This city, Metropolis? It's under attack, and Metropolis is fine. Superman interrupted gently. I need you to listen carefully. You're not in your world anymore. The words hung in the frozen air like falling snow. Toshinori stared at the hero, at Superman, his mind supplied. Because apparently this world's symbol of peace had a name that was somehow both humble and impossibly grand. I'm not in my world. No. Superman gestured, and a holographic display materialized from the crystalline walls. Toshinori saw footage of himself falling through the rift, saw the purple-black tear in reality closing behind him, saw energy readings that meant nothing to his non-scientific brain, but clearly meant something terrible to Superman. You came through an interdimensional breach. My friend Batman, he's another hero. You'll probably meet him soon. He detected the quantum signature. Whatever brought you here also damaged your cellular structure. My quirk, Toshinori breathed. One for all. The power passed down through generations, master to student. Each one stockpiling strength until he looked down at his skeletal hands. Until someone like me inherits it and uses it to save people. Quirk. Superman tested the word. In this world, we call them metahuman abilities, or alien biology, or in my case, he gestured to himself. Kryptonian heritage. I'm not human, Toshinori. I'm from a dead planet called Krypton. Earth's yellow sun gives me powers, strength, speed, flight, heat vision, invulnerability. Toshinori processed this. Alien. Superman was an alien. And yet he protected humanity with the same ferocity, the same self-sacrifice, the same smile that All Might had cultivated for decades. You're this world's symbol of peace. Superman blinked. I try to help people, yes. I try to inspire hope. No. Toshinori forced himself to stand, legs shaking, body screaming protest. But All Might didn't stay down. All Might didn't show weakness. You don't understand. You're not just a hero. You're a symbol. They worship you. I heard it in their voices when you arrived. Fear disappeared the moment you showed up. He coughed blood into his hand, wiped it away, and met Superman's eyes. That's what I've spent 30 years building in my world. A symbol of peace. A presence so absolute that just saying, "I am here," makes villains surrender and civilians feel safe. Something shifted in Superman's expression, recognition, perhaps, or kinship. "And you're that symbol in your world?" I was. The admission cost him. Before All for One, before my nemesis destroyed my insides and left me with hours instead of days, minutes instead of hours. I've been training a successor, teaching a boy named Midoriya Izuku to carry One for All, to become the next symbol of peace when I. He gestured to his skeletal frame. When I inevitably fall, silence filled the fortress, broken only by the wind howling outside crystalline walls. "You're dying," Superman said quietly. Not a question, a statement of terrible fact. "Yes." Tashinori smiled. Not the all-might grin, but something smaller, sadder, more human. "But not today, and not without purpose. So tell me, Superman, does this metropolis of yours need another hero?" Superman studied him for a long moment, X-ray vision probably cataloging every injury, every weakness, every day Tashinori Yagi had left before his body gave out entirely. Then the alien hero smiled, genuinely, warmly, with a hope that transcended species or worlds. "I think Metropolis could use a teacher." 17 blocks from the Fortress of Solitude's quantum coordinates, in an office where glass walls overlooked a city of 8 million souls, Lex Luthor rewound the footage for the 47th time. The skeletal man transforming into a muscular titan. The air pressure shockwave that violated physics without metahuman energy signatures. The cellular degradation as power fled the body. And most importantly, the smile. That damnable, infuriating, perfect smile that said, "I am your salvation," and made people believe it. "Mercy," Lex said softly, eyes never leaving the screen. "Find out everything about our new arrival. Medical history, power source, exploitable weaknesses. And Mercy." "Yes, Mr. Luthor." "Find out if he's for sale." In a cave beneath Wayne Manor, 3,000 miles away, Bruce Wayne watched the same footage on 12 different screens simultaneously. His cowl lay on the desk beside him, unnecessary for this preliminary analysis. Clark had sent the biometric data an hour ago: cellular breakdown, energy patterns, temporal limitations on transformation, catastrophic internal injury that should have killed the man years ago. "Alfred," Bruce said without looking away from the screens. "Yes, Master Bruce." "Prepare a full background investigation. Contact our sources in interdimensional research." "And Alfred?" "Sir, he's either the most dangerous man Clark has ever brought to Earth, or the most noble. Prepare contingencies for both scenarios." Alfred Pennyworth, who had raised Bruce Wayne and watched him become Batman, who understood heroism and paranoia in equal measure, simply nodded. "Very good, sir. Shall I prepare the guest room or the containment cell?" Batman didn't answer. He was too busy watching Tashinori Yagi's smile, the smile of a dying man who'd chosen to grin through his own extinction, because symbols don't get to show fear. "Both," Bruce finally said. "Prepare both." Tashinori Yagi's first full day in Metropolis began with coffee that tasted wrong and ended with a conversation that would define his remaining time in this universe. "Superman, call me Clark, please," the alien hero had insisted with Midwestern earnestness that somehow made Tashinori homesick for Japan, had arranged temporary housing in a modest apartment in Suicide Slum. Not charity, Clark explained, but practicality. The neighborhood needed visible heroism. And All Might's "I am here" philosophy worked best when people could actually see him arriving. Tashinori stood on his fourth-floor balcony at sunrise, watching Metropolis wake up, and marveled at how similar and alien this world felt. The architecture reached higher. The technology gleamed brighter. But the people were the same. Rushing to work, walking children to school, living lives that required protection from those who would do harm. His hand went to his side instinctively, pressing against the injury that defined his existence. One for All stirred in his cells like a caged animal, still disoriented by this universe's physics, still burning through his reserves faster than it should. Clark's analysis had been thorough. Whatever made One for All function in his home universe was present here, but muted, filtered through different fundamental laws. The vestige connection to previous users felt like trying to hear through water. 90 minutes. That's what he had now, down from 3 hours. 90 minutes of being All Might, of being the symbol of peace, of being everything Tashinori Yagi could never be. I should be training Midoriya right now, he thought, chest aching with more than physical pain. I should be teaching him how to smile when he's terrified, how to stand when his body begs him to fall, how to be the kind of symbol that changes the world through sheer force of presence. Instead, he was in a universe where that symbol already existed, perfected, immortal, and utterly unaware of its own fragility. A knock at his door interrupted the thought. Tashinori transformed without thinking, muscle erupting across skeletal frame, power flooding through damaged vessels, and immediately regretted it. 5 seconds. He'd burned 5 seconds of his daily limit on paranoia. He forced the transformation to drop, steam billowing from his deflating form, and shuffled to the door in his true body. If this was an assassin, well, Tashinori Yagi was half dead anyway. It wasn't an assassin. Good morning. The woman on his doorstep held a recorder in one hand and a smile that belonged on a hunter tracking prey. Dark hair, sharp eyes, professional attire that screamed journalist. Tashinori Yagi, right? I'm Lois Lane, Daily Planet. I was hoping we could talk about yesterday's incident in Suicide Slum. Tashinori blinked. How did you? Clark said my identity was protected? Sure. By Clark Kent, mild-mannered reporter, who coincidentally took the rest of the day off after Superman rescued you. Lois's smile sharpened. I'm good at my job, Mr. Yagi. And when a new hero appears in my city, destroys a city block to save 3 people, and nearly dies from the effort, I pay attention. She tilted her head. May I come in? I promise this is off the record. For now. Something about her reminded him of the journalists who'd swarmed UA Academy after every villain attack, relentless, brilliant, and utterly convinced their right to truth outweighed personal privacy. But there was kindness in her eyes too, buried under the professional determination. Off the record, Tashinori agreed, stepping aside. But I don't have much to tell. I'm from another world. I'm a hero there. I got pulled here by accident. That's all. That's never all. Lois settled into the apartment's only chair, studying him with an intensity that made Tashinori feel dissected. You're dying. Anyone with medical training could see it. You've got maybe a year left, probably less. And you burn through that time every time you transform into that muscular form. So my question is simple. Why are you still fighting? The question hit harder than Nomu's strength enhancement. Harder than all for one's concussive blasts. Harder than watching his own body deteriorate day by day. Because symbols don't get to quit, Tashinori said quietly. Because the moment I stop smiling, the moment I stop showing up, is the moment people realize that peace is temporary, that safety is an illusion, that heroes are just humans who chose to stand between darkness and light. And humans fail. He met her eyes. I'm All Might, Ms. Lane. Even in this world, even for 90 minutes a day, I'm still All Might. And All Might doesn't quit. Lois studied him for a long moment, then set down her recorder. That's what Clark says too. Different words, same sentiment. People need hope. People need to believe tomorrow can be better. People need to know someone's watching over them. She leaned forward. But Clark's invulnerable, Tashinori. He's got decades, maybe centuries. You've got months. So what happens when you fall? Who carries your symbol then? My student, Tashinori said automatically. Midoriya Izuku. I was training him to inherit One for All, to become the next symbol of peace when he stopped, swallowed. But he's in another universe. I'll never see him again. Never know if he became the hero I believed he could be. Then find a new student. The words hung in the air like smoke. Tashinori stared at her. What? You're in a world full of heroes learning to carry symbols they don't understand. Lois said. Clark inspires them, sure, but he doesn't teach them. He just shows up, saves the day, and expects them to figure out what it means to be a hero through osmosis. Her expression softened. My fiancé is a good man, Tashinori. The best man. But he's not a teacher. He's an ideal, untouchable, unreachable. Impossible to emulate because he's literally alien. She stood. You though? You're human. You're dying. You're everything they could become. If they just learned how to smile. Through the fear. Before Tashinori could respond, his apartment exploded. One for All ignited on instinct. No thought. No calculation. Just 30 years of reflexes. screaming protect civilians as the wall disintegrated in a wash of purple-black energy. Tashinori's body transformed mid-dive, skeletal frame erupting into 250 pounds of heroic certainty. And he caught Lois Lane in one arm, while the other punched through debris to clear their exit path. They hit the hallway as something massive stepped through the hole, where his apartment had been. 8 feet tall, humanoid but wrong. Skin like burnished metal, eyes glowing the same purple-black as the energy weapons from yesterday. More Intergang tech, his mind supplied. More weapons that shouldn't exist. I am here. All Might roared, setting Lois down carefully. And you, villain, have made a terrible mistake. The creature tilted its head. All Might. Target acquired. Designation, metahuman asset. LexCorp acquisition protocol. Subdue with extreme prejudice. LexCorp. The name meant nothing to All Might. But Lois's sharp intake of breath told him everything he needed to know. Lex sent a Metallo unit after you? Her voice mixed fury and fear in equal measure. That means he wants you alive, or he wants to study your corpse. Either way, civilians are in danger. All Might's grin widened impossibly further. Teeth bared not in rage, but in absolute confidence. Please evacuate the building, Ms. Lane. This will only take a moment. The Metallo unit lunged. All Might met it mid-leap, fist glowing with one for all's azure fire, and discovered that this universe's villains were considerably more durable than Nomo. His punch, enough to shatter concrete, enough to create air pressure shockwaves, enough to destroy buildings, barely staggered the mechanical monstrosity. Kryptonite radiation pulsed from its chest core, and All Might felt something in his cells recoil. Not weakness, not the draining sensation he'd read about in Clark's briefing on kryptonite, but something else, 1-4. All recognizing a substance that rejected extraordinary biology, that said no to power itself. Interesting, All Might said through gritted teeth, holding the Metallo's wrists as it tried to claw through his face. You're stronger than you look, but I've faced worse. He twisted, using the monster's momentum against it, and hurled it through the opposite wall. Detroit smash. The air pressure shockwave carved through 2 more walls, exposing daylight and sending the Metallo tumbling into the street below. All Might followed, cape billowing. When had he gotten a cape? Clark must have provided it, and landed in the crater beside his enemy with both fists raised. Civilians scattered. Smart. All Might had trained them well in the 5 seconds since combat began. You want me? All Might's voice boomed across Suicide Slum. And for the first time since arriving in this universe, he felt right. This was what he was built for, standing between innocent people and those who would harm them. Then come and get me, because I am here. The Metallo charged, but All Might was already moving. One for All sang through his muscles as he bobbed left, weaved right, ducked under a swing that would have decapitated him, and drove his fist into the creature's kryptonite core with surgical precision. Texas smash. The impact created a shockwave that shattered windows 3 blocks away. The Metallo flew backward, core cracked, and All Might pressed his advantage. 3 punches, ribs, joints, chest, each one delivered with the kind of smile that said you cannot win because I will not let you. Then his time ran out. 90 minutes? He'd forgotten. 5 seconds transformed at his apartment. Another minute in conversation with Lois. 2 minutes of combat. It all blurred together when heroism was required. Steam burst from his body. Muscle deflated. The symbol of peace collapsed into Tashinori Yagi mid-punch, and the Metallo's counterstrike took him in the chest. He flew. Ribs cracked. Blood filled his mouth. And Tashinori had just enough time to think not like this. I can't fail like this before red and blue filled his vision. Superman caught the Metallo's follow-up strike with one hand. Expression colder than the fortress of solitude. That's enough. Superman. The Metallo's voice held no fear. LexCorp Legal Authorization, Section 7, Paragraph. I don't care about Lex's legal justifications. Clark's heat vision flared. Not enough to kill, but enough to melt the kryptonite core into slag. You attacked a residential building. You endangered civilians. And you hurt someone under my protection. He crushed the Metallo's arm casually. Servo's screaming. Tell Lex that if he wants to talk to All Might, he can schedule an appointment like everyone else. The Metallo retreated, limping on destroyed legs. And Superman turned to where Tashinori lay gasping in the rubble. I'm fine, Tashinori croaked through blood-stained lips. Just need a moment. The civilians are safe. You made sure of that. Clark knelt beside him, expression mixing concern and something that might have been admiration. But Tashinori, you can't keep doing this. You've been here 24 hours and you've already burned through 2 transformations. At this rate, at this rate, I'll die doing what I was born to do. Tashinori forced himself upright, ignoring Clark's steadying hand. I'm a hero, Clark. That's all I know how to be. And if LexCorp wants to study my corpse, they'll have to wait until I'm done saving people. Clark opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. Instead, he did something Tashinori didn't expect. He smiled. Not the Superman smile. Perfect, inspiring, unreachable. But Clark Kent's smile. Worn and warm and entirely human despite his alien biology. You remind me of someone, Clark said quietly. A kid from Smallville, who thought he could save the world just by showing up and trying his best, before he learned that symbols are prisons, that hope is burden. That being Superman means never getting to just be enough. He stood, offering his hand. Come on, I need to introduce you to someone. The someone turned out to be a teenager with a leather jacket and an attitude that reminded Tashinori painfully of Bakugo Katsuki. Connor Kent, Superboy, but just call me. Connor stood in the remains of All Might's apartment with his arms crossed and an expression that screamed, I don't want to be here. Black t-shirt with Superman's symbol, jeans, tactical boots. He was trying so hard to look unimpressed. That Tashinori immediately recognized. A kindred spirit. Someone desperately trying to prove they deserved the symbol they carried. This is the guy? Connor studied Tashinori's skeletal frame with barely concealed disappointment. Clark, he looks like he's gonna die if I breathe too hard. Connor, Clark warned. No, he's right. Tashinori coughed into his hand, wiped away blood, and met Connor's eyes. I am dying. Every day, a little more. My body's been destroyed by my nemesis, and my power burns through. What's left faster than I can recover? He straightened despite his screaming ribs. But for 90 minutes a day, I'm the greatest hero my world has ever seen. And in those 90 minutes, I've saved thousands of lives, inspired millions, and built a symbol that will outlive me by generations. Something flickered in Connor's expression, interest, maybe, or hunger. Why'd Clark bring you here? The teenager's voice lost some of its edge. I mean, I get the whole new hero in town thing, but why me specifically? Tashinori looked at Clark, who nodded permission. Because you're not Superman, Tashinori said bluntly. You're Superboy. Clone, right? Created in a lab, given powers you didn't ask for. Expected to live up to a symbol you had no part in building. He stepped closer, ignoring his body's protests. And every day, you look at Superman and think, I'll never be that good. I'll never be that pure. I'll never be that necessary. Connor's jaw tightened. You don't know anything about me. I know you because I trained him. Tashinori's voice softened. A boy named Midoriya. Izuku. Quirkless. Powerless. In a world where 90% of humanity had superpowers. He wanted to be a hero more than anything. But he was born wrong. Born weak. Born inadequate. He smiled. And for once it wasn't the All Might grin, but something more human. So I gave him one for all. I gave him my power. And I taught him that symbols aren't born. They're built. One choice at a time, one smile at a time. One person saved at a time. What's your point? But Connor was listening now, really listening. My point is that Superman is this world's symbol of peace. But he won't be forever. Someday he'll fall, or fail, or make the choice that breaks him. Tashinori thought of the injustice timeline Clark had mentioned, the universe where Superman became a tyrant. And when that happens, this world will need heroes who learn how to carry hope without being crushed by it. Heroes who understand that symbols are meant to be passed on, not held forever. He transformed 5 precious seconds of his daily limit, just long enough for All Might to place one massive hand on Connor's shoulder. I can't train you to be Superman, All Might said, grin blazing. But I can train you to be the hero who saves Superman when he needs it most. I can teach you how to smile when you're terrified, how to stand when you want to fall, how to be a symbol that gives others permission to be heroes too. The transformation dropped. Tashinori collapsed against the wall, coughing, but his eyes never left Connor's face. "So what do you say, Superboy? Want to learn how to be a successor?" Connor stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, the teenager smiled. Not Superman's perfect smile, but something rough and real and entirely his own. "Yeah," Connor said. "Yeah, I do." Clark watched from the doorway, and something in the alien hero's expression looked like relief. Or perhaps recognition. The recognition that symbols, no matter how strong, were never meant to carry hope alone. In LexCorp Tower, Lex Luthor watched the footage of All Might training Superboy and felt something cold settle in his chest. The skeletal man was teaching the clone how to punch without Kryptonian strength, how to take hits without invulnerability, how to be a hero when powers failed. And worse, far worse, Connor was learning. "Mercy," Lex said quietly. "Accelerate the next phase. If All Might is building successors, we need to show Metropolis what happens when symbols fall." "Sir," Lex smiled without humor. "Contact Brainiac scout ships. Tell them Metropolis has 2 Kryptonians now. Let's see how All Might's symbol of peace holds up when real gods come to collect." Training Connor Kent was nothing like training Midoriya Izuku, and Tashinori discovered this truth exactly 4 seconds into their first sparring session when the teenager punched through a concrete support pillar by accident. "Control." Tashinori wheezed from his position on the ground. Connor had apologized while Tashinori's ribs were still rattling from the shockwave. Heroism isn't about hitting harder. It's about knowing when not to hit at all. They were in an abandoned factory in Suicide Slum. Courtesy of Clark's I Know a Place connections. Afternoon light streamed through broken windows, painting everything in shades of rust and gold. Connor stood amid the destruction of what had been a punching bag, looking simultaneously proud and mortified. "I barely touched it," Connor muttered. "How am I supposed to learn control when everything in this world is made of tissue paper?" "By fighting someone who won't break." Tashinori forced himself upright. "Every movement an exercise and not screaming. Again. This time, aim for me." "What?" "No." Clark said, "You're dying." "I'm always dying." Tashinori transformed, steam billowing as his skeletal frame erupted into heroic certainty. All Might stood at his full height, grin blazing, and beckoned Connor forward. But for the next, he checked his internal clock. 73 minutes. "I'm the toughest teacher you'll ever face. Now, show me what Kryptonian combat training taught you about protecting the weak." Connor's expression hardened. He lunged, not at full speed, but fast enough that most humans would have seen only blur. All Might sidestepped, caught Connor's wrist, and used the teenager's momentum to flip him into the factory floor. Concrete cracked. Connor bounced. Lesson 1. All Might's voice boomed across the factory. Power without precision endangers the people you're trying to save. Every punch you throw needs to account for trajectory, force distribution, and collateral damage. Again, Connor came up snarling, and for the next hour, Tashinori taught him what UA's finest combat instructors had taught Japan's future heroes. That strength meant nothing without the wisdom to wield it carefully. Block, redirect, counter. Never meet force with greater force when you could use an opponent's momentum against them. Never strike to kill when you could strike to disable. And most importantly, never, ever let civilians see you struggle, because the moment they doubt your victory is the moment fear wins. "You're smiling." Connor panted after All Might had thrown him through his third wall. "Why are you always smiling?" "Because that's what symbols do." All Might offered his hand, pulled Connor upright. "We smile so civilians don't have to be afraid. We smile so villains know they've already lost. We smile because the moment we show fear is the moment we admit that darkness might win." His grin somehow widened. "Plus, it really annoys enemies. You'd be surprised how many villains make mistakes because they're too busy being confused by my smile." Connor actually laughed, short, surprised, genuine. "That's kind of insane. Heroism usually is." All Might's transformation dropped without warning, steam billowing as he collapsed to one knee. 73 minutes had become 68. He was burning faster every day. "Water break. Then we work on your villain speech." "My what?" "Your I am here to stop you speech." Tashinori accepted the water bottle Connor offered, drank carefully around his ruined digestive system. "Every hero needs one." Superman has his "you're gonna stand there and watch me save the day" energy. Batman apparently terrifies criminals with theatrical entrances. Wonder Woman has the whole warrior goddess intimidation factor. He met Connor's eyes. "What do you have?" Connor sat beside him amid the rubble, shoulders slumping. "Nothing. I'm just Superboy, the clone, the copy, the one who's not quite good enough to be Superman but too much his DNA to be anything else." There it was. The wound that defined Connor Kent as surely as All for One's attack defined Tashinori Yagi. "Let me tell you about Midoriya," Tashinori said quietly. "When I met him, he was 14 years old, quirkless in a world of powers, and so desperate to be a hero that he threw himself at a villain that was actively trying to kill him. No training, no powers, no chance of survival. Just this overwhelming need to save someone, even if it killed him." He smiled at the memory. "I gave him one for all that day, passed on the torch I'd carried for decades. And you know what he said when I told him he'd be the ninth wielder of history's greatest quirk?" "What?" He cried, sobbed like a child, because he couldn't believe someone like me thought someone like him could be a hero. Tashinori's voice roughened with emotion. "That's the difference between inheriting a symbol and building one. Superman was born powerful. You were cloned powerful. But Midoriya had to choose heroism every single day, even when the world told him he wasn't enough. And that choice, that daily decision to stand up when standing up means pain, that's what makes a real hero." Connor was quiet for a long moment. "You think I can do that? Make that choice? You already have." Tashinori gestured to the destroyed factory. "You're here, training with a dying man from another universe, learning how to be better than you were yesterday. That's the choice. That's the symbol." He forced himself to stand. "Now get up. We've got 64 minutes left, and I want to see you smile while you're fighting." "That's insane." "Then you're learning." Again, they trained until Tashinori's time ran out, and he collapsed. Blood on his lips, ribs screaming. Connor caught him before he hit the ground. And for the first time since arriving in this universe, Tashinori felt something like peace. He was teaching again, building a successor, doing what All Might was meant to do, even if it killed him. The attack came 3 days later, during what Clark had optimistically called a diplomatic integration meeting at the Watchtower. Tashinori stood in the Justice League's satellite headquarters, surrounded by heroes who could bench press planets, and tried very hard not to feel inadequate. Wonder Woman studied him with a warrior's assessment. The Flash, Barry Allen, speedster who made Ida's Recipro burst looked like jogging, vibrated with barely contained curiosity. Aquaman looked vaguely annoyed to be there. Cyborg's technological eye scanned Tashinori repeatedly, probably cataloging his deteriorating cellular structure. And Batman stood in the shadows, cowl hiding his expression. But Tashinori could feel the detective's scrutiny like physical weight. "So you're the one training Superboy." Batman's voice was gravel and darkness made audible. "Clark speaks highly of you." "I'm less convinced." "Bruce," Superman warned. "It's fine." Tashinori remained in his skeletal form. "No point wasting transformation." "Tom, I'm posturing." "You don't trust me." "That's smart. I'm from another universe, dying, training your protege in methods you haven't vetted. And I destroyed a city block my first day here." He met Batman's white lenses. "If I were you, I'd have 12 ways to kill me prepared already." Something that might have been approval flickered across Batman's jaw. 15, actually. "You're faster than you look." "Gentlemen," Wonder Woman's voice cut through the testosterone with Amazonian authority. "We didn't gather to measure contingency plans. We gathered because Tashinori has been operating in Metropolis for 5 days, and we need to establish whether he's an ally or a variable." She turned to All Might. "So which are you, warrior? Do you stand with this world's defenders, or do you walk your own path?" Tashinori considered the question carefully. In his world, hero agencies existed. Pro-heroes cooperated, but symbols stood apart. All Might worked with Endeavor, with Hawks, with other top heroes, but he never joined their agencies. The symbol of peace couldn't be subordinate to anyone or anything, except the people he protected. "I stand with anyone who protects innocent lives," Tashinori said finally. "But I'm not joining the Justice League. Not because I don't trust you. You're clearly this world's finest defenders. But because symbols lose power when they're part of a collective. When I arrive at a disaster and say, I am here, people need to know that's a promise, not a committee decision. He glanced at Clark. Superman understands. He works with you, but he's not of you. He's Superman first, Justice League member second. Actually, Flash said cheerfully, Clark's pretty thoroughly Justice League. We literally built this satellite for him too. The Watchtower's alarms cut him off with a sound like reality screaming. Cyborg's interface lit up, data streaming across his mechanical components faster than Toshinori could process. Multiple contacts entering. Earth orbit. Configuration matches Kalyuan technology. Oh no. Oh no no no. What is it? Superman was already moving toward the observation deck. Brainiac, Cyborg breathed. 12 skull ships, collector beams armed, trajectory locked on Metropolis. He's here for the city. Toshinori didn't know who Brainiac was. Didn't need to. The way every hero in the room tensed. The way Batman's jaw tightened. The way Wonder Woman's hand went to her sword. That told him everything. How long until he's in range? Superman's voice had gone cold. 17 minutes. Maybe less if he uses. The watchtower shook. Something massive impacted the hull. And through the observation windows, Toshinori saw a ship the size of a skyscraper materialize from nothingness. Skull-shaped, lined with green conduits that pulsed like veins. Bristling with technology that made LexCorp's Metallo look like children's toys. And standing on the ship's bridge, visible through the transparent dome, was something that resembled a man the way a mantis resembles a human. Inhabitants of Earth. The voice transmitted directly into the watchtower, bypassing communications. Cold, mechanical, utterly devoid of emotion. I am Brainiac, collector of worlds. 12th level intelligence. Your city of Metropolis has been designated for collection. Surrender the Kryptonian. Called Superman for study. And the extraction will be painless. Like hell, Superman growled. Your defiance is noted and irrelevant. Collection begins in. I am here. Toshinori transformed without thinking. One for all igniting across his body as he punched through the watchtower's observation window and launched himself at the skull ship. No plan, no strategy. Just the overwhelming instinct that had defined 30 years of heroism. When civilians were in danger, All Might didn't calculate. All Might acted. He hit the skull ship's hull at terminal velocity, fist glowing with azure fire, and delivered a United States of America smash that would have leveled a city block. The ship's hull absorbed the impact like water accepting a stone. Didn't crack, didn't dent, just rippled with green energy and ejected him into space. Vacuum. No air. Dying faster. Toshinori's lungs spasmed, blood freezing in his veins. And he had approximately 3 seconds to regret his impulsive heroism. Before red and blue filled his vision, Superman caught him, cape somehow generating an air pocket, and flew them back to the watchtower's emergency airlock. What were you thinking? Clark's voice mixed fury and terror. You could have died, was thinking. Toshinori gasped as atmosphere returned, civilians in danger. That's what heroes do. He coughed blood. We act first, calculate later. That's not heroism, that's suicide. Then I've been doing suicide for 30 years. Toshinori forced himself upright, transformation holding by pure willpower. You said Brainiac wants to collect Metropolis. 8 million people. You think I'm going to stand in this satellite and watch it happen? Batman's voice cut through the argument like a blade. He's right. Clark, we don't have time for this. The Dark Knight was already at the tactical console, fingers flying across holographic displays. Brainiac's collection process takes approximately 43 minutes from initial deployment. He'll use tractor beams to lift Metropolis into his ship, miniaturize it, and add it to his collection of stolen cities. We need to destroy his skull ships before he completes the sequence. How many ships? Wonder Woman had drawn her sword. 12. Heavily shielded, regenerating hull plating. Powered by Kalyuan technology centuries beyond. Earth science. Batman's jaw tightened. And he's done this to over 8,000 worlds. He's very good at it. Toshinori felt his 74 remaining minutes of transformation. Time ticking away. Felt his body burning through reserves it didn't have. Felt the injury from All for One pulsing with every heartbeat. He thought of Metropolis below, the families having dinner, the children doing homework, the people living lives that deserve protection. He thought of Midoriya, back in another universe, probably crying over some new failure. He thought of Connor, learning to smile while fighting. And Tashinori made the choice that every real hero eventually makes, to stand even when standing means death. Then we'd better get started, All Might said, grin blazing bright enough to shame the sun. Because I didn't come to this universe to watch it burn. And I certainly didn't survive. All for one just to lose to some robot with a skull fetish. He turned to Batman. You've got a plan, right? Please tell me the world's greatest detective has a plan. Batman stared at him for one long moment. Then, impossibly, the corner of his mouth twitched upward. I've got 15 plans. Pick your favorite way to be reckless. The plan was insane. All Might loved it immediately. Let me see if I understand this correctly, Tashinori said, studying the holographic display Batman had conjured. Superman draws Brainiac's attention with a frontal assault. Wonder Woman, Aquaman, and I infiltrate the primary skull ship through the collector beam aperture. Flash vibrates us through the hull shielding. Cyborg hacks their network from inside to disable the tractor beams. And Batman. He looked at the Dark Knight. You're going to do what exactly? Contingency planning, Batman said flatly. In case you all fail. He means he's got a planet killer ready to deploy if we can't stop Brainiac. Flash translated cheerfully. Bruce is fun at parties. We don't have time for this. Superman was already moving toward the airlock. Brainiac's beginning his descent. All Might. He stopped, turned back. Are you sure about this? Your time limit is exactly why I'm perfect for this mission. Tashinori grinned. I've spent 30 years learning to be a hero in 90-minute bursts. Infiltration, sabotage, and dramatic timing? That's my specialty. He paused. Though I should mention, I've never fought in space before, or against planet-collecting AI, or with actual gods. So this will be a learning experience. Wonder Woman studied him with what might have been respect. You face impossible odds with humor. You would have made a fine Amazon. I'll take that as a compliment. Tashinori checked his internal clock. 68 minutes remaining. Let's go save 8 million people. They launched from the watchtower in formation, Superman drawing fire. Flash creating electromagnetic interference, Wonder Woman flying beside. Tashinori with her lasso wrapped around his waist, because apparently, All Might couldn't fly, which seemed like an oversight in his quirk design. Below, Metropolis gleamed in afternoon light, unaware that above their heads, a 12-level intelligence was calculating the most efficient way to steal their entire city. The skull ships opened fire. Green energy beams carved through space, each one powerful enough to vaporize a mountain. Superman tanked 3 simultaneously, heat vision blazing as he carved through their hulls. Wonder Woman deflected 2 with her bracelets, impossibility made casual. And All Might, hanging from a magic lasso like the world's most determined Christmas ornament, watched Earth's mightiest heroes at work and felt something like awe. This is what Midoriya will face someday, he thought. Threats that dwarf anything our world has seen. And he'll need to be ready. All Might. Wonder Woman's shout snapped him back to the present. The aperture's opening. 30 seconds. Below them, the primary skull ship's collector. Beam activated, a column of green light wide. Enough to swallow city blocks. Already beginning to pull at Metropolis's foundations. Buildings trembled. Streets cracked. And 8 million people looked up to see their nightmare made manifest. Citizens of Metropolis. All Might's voice, amplified by Wonder Woman's divine magic, boomed across the city. Do not be afraid. Your heroes are here. Superman stands ready. Wonder Woman fights at your side. And his grin blazed. With every ounce of conviction heat, cultivated over 3 decades. I am All Might, symbol of peace from another world. And I promise you, Brainiac will not take your home. Why? Because we are here. The collector beam pulled harder. Wonder Woman dove, dragging All Might toward the aperture. Flash vibrated them through the shielding. Cyborg materialized from a boom tube, technological eye glowing. And they penetrated Brainiac's ship just as the city began to rise. Inside was nightmare-made architecture, walls that pulsed with organic technology, corridors lined with preserved specimens, and at the chamber's center, a containment field holding dozens of miniaturized cities. Kandor, Argo City, places Tashinori didn't recognize but could feel the tragedy radiating from. 8,000 worlds, Cyborg breathed. He's collected 8,000 civilizations. Then we make sure he doesn't get 8,001. All Might cracked his knuckles, transformation still holding at 53 minutes. Where's the control center? Deeper, past the specimen chambers, through the cyborg's eye widened. Oh no, he knows we're here. The walls came alive with Brainiac's drones, thousands of mechanical spiders, each one armed with neural disruptors and collection technology. They swarmed from every surface, clicking and skittering, and Tashinori felt the familiar cocktail of terror and exhilaration that came with impossible odds. Wonder Woman, he said calmly, I'm going to need you to throw me. What? Throw me? All Might's grin was manic now, eyes blazing. Aim for the biggest cluster of drones. And whatever you do, don't stop fighting. Wonder Woman, bless her warrior heart, didn't argue. She simply grabbed All Might by the cape Clark had given him, spun 3 times to build momentum, and hurled him like a missile at the drone swarm. Plus Ultra. All Might roared, because some things transcended universes. United States of America. He hit the swarm mid-shout. Smaeawash. The air pressure shockwave destroyed 17 drones instantly. Another 30 went offline from the electromagnetic pulse. All Might bounced off the far wall, flipped midair, and came down fist first on the nearest spider. Crunch. Pivot. Backhand. Elbow drop. Every move precise, every strike calculated to disable rather than destroy, every second ticking down toward the moment when Tashinori Yagi's body gave out completely. But that moment wasn't now. Come on then. All Might laughed as drones swarmed him, as neural disruptors sparked against his skin, as his body screamed for rest it wouldn't get. I've fought villains who could kill me with a touch. I've stood against darkness itself. You think robots are going to stop the symbol of peace? Behind him, Wonder Woman carved through drones with her sword, each strike perfect economy of motion. Cyborg hacked the ship's systems, fingers flying across holographic interfaces. And somewhere above, Superman was keeping Brainiac's attention on him rather than the infiltration team. They were going to win. Tashinori could feel it. Then his 48 minutes became 37 without warning. Transformation dropping like someone had cut puppet strings. And Tashinori Yagi collapsed amid the mechanical wreckage, coughing blood, ribs fractured from impacts he hadn't felt during the adrenaline rush. A drone skittered toward his face, neural disruptor charging. Connor Kent punched through the hull. Get away from him. Superboy roared, and suddenly the teenager was there, leather jacket torn, knuckles bloody, grin splitting his face in a way that was pure All Might. Sorry I'm late. Teach. Had to steal a boom tube from Cyborg's coordinates. Hope that's okay. Tashinori stared at his student. I told you to stay in Metropolis. To protect civilians during. You also told me that heroes make the choice to stand up even when it means pain. Connor hauled Tashinori upright. Well, I'm choosing. Now tell me how to smile while I'm terrified. Despite everything, the pain, the dying, the knowledge that he had maybe 30 minutes left before his body quit permanently. Tashinori Yagi smiled. Like this, he said, and showed Connor how symbols were born. The control center of Brainiac's skull ship resembled the inside of a god's brain, crystalline processors, stretching into infinity, data streams flowing like rivers of light. And at the chamber's heart, a throne where the collector of worlds sat watching Earth die in real time. Fascinating. Brainiac's voice held no emotion, just clinical observation as his 12-level intelligence processed their infiltration. The Kryptonian clone has developed emotional attachment to an organic specimen with 97.3% probability of death within 6 months. Inefficient. I shall collect you both for comparative study. Over my dead body, Connor snarled, positioning himself between Tashinori and the AI. That can be arranged. The floor erupted with combat drones, not the spiders from before, but humanoid constructs 8 feet tall, each one radiating the same energy signature as the Metallo unit that had attacked Tashinori's apartment. Kryptonite cores pulsed in their chests, and Connor stumbled backward as radiation washed over him. Connor, Tashinori tried to stand, failed, coughed blood across the crystalline floor. His 37 minutes had become 29, burned away by stress and injury and the fundamental incompatibility between One for All and this universe's physics. Get out of here. You can't fight with kryptonite. Neither can you. Connor was on his knees now, skin turning gray under the radiation. But you taught me. You said heroes stand even when. I said heroes make the choice. Tashinori forced himself upright through sheer willpower, every muscle screaming. And I'm choosing right now. Wonder Woman. He turned to where the Amazon princess was carving through drones with divine fury. Get Connor out of here. I don't abandon warriors in battle, Diana growled. Lasso wrapping around 3 drones simultaneously. You're not abandoning. You're protecting my student. Tashinori met her eyes. Please. He's got decades of heroism ahead of him. I've got minutes. Let me use them for something that matters. Diana hesitated, warrior instinct warring with strategic necessity, then grabbed Connor with one arm and launched them both toward the hull breach. If you die here, teacher, I will drag your soul from whatever afterlife claims you and demand explanation. Then they were gone, and Tashinori stood alone before Brainiac and his army of kryptonite-powered murder machines. Illogical, Brainiac observed. Your probability of survival is 0.0003%. Your optimal strategy is retreat. Yet you remain. Explain. Because that's what symbols do. Tashinori transformed, steam, billowing as his skeletal frame, erupted one last time into heroic certainty. 29 minutes became 28 instantly. The transformation cost accelerating toward inevitability. We stand. We fight. And we smile so others don't have to be afraid. All Might's grin blazed across the control center like sunrise over a dying world. Plus Ultra. He roared and charged. Fighting Brainiac's drones was like fighting entropy itself. They kept coming, kept adapting, kept learning from every strike. All Might destroyed one with a Detroit smash, and 2 more emerged from the walls with countermeasures already programmed. He shattered 3 with an air pressure shockwave, and 5 replaced them with dampening fields that absorbed kinetic energy. But Tashinori Yagi had been fighting losing battles for 30 years. He knew how to smile when victory was impossible. He knew how to stand when his body begged to fall. And most importantly, he knew that symbols weren't measured by wins and losses, but by the choices made when losing was guaranteed. 23 minutes remaining in your transformation cycle, Brainiac announced helpfully, as though Tashinori couldn't feel his body burning through reserves like fire through paper. Your cellular degradation accelerates. Surrender. Now, and I will preserve your consciousness for study. Not interested. All Might punched through another drone's chest, ignored the kryptonite radiation searing his knuckles, and laughed because the alternative was screaming. I came to this universe to save people, and I'm not leaving until. A drone caught him mid-sentence, kryptonite core pressed against his chest. All Might felt one for all recoil, not from weakness, but from the fundamental rejection that kryptonite represented. His power stuttered. For one terrible second, the transformation threatened to drop entirely. Then he remembered Kamino Ward, remembered using 1-4. Alzheimer even after his time limit expired, after his body had nothing left, after any sane person would have collapsed and died. Remembered that symbols don't quit just because the odds say they should. United States of America. All Might's fist glowed brighter than it ever had. One for all burning through his life forced directly now. SMASH. The shockwave destroyed every drone in a 50-foot radius. The control center's walls cracked. Data streams flickered. And somewhere in the ship's core, something critical took damage. All Might collapsed, transformation holding by threads, and looked up to see Cyborg standing at Brainiac's central processor, with his interface cables directly connected to the Coluan technology. Got it, Cyborg gasped, sweat pouring down his face as he fought. 12-level intelligence for control of the ship. Collector beams disabled, tractor fields offline, and his eye widened. Oh, that's not good. What? All Might forced himself upright. 18 minutes. He had 18 minutes left, and his body felt like it was held together with wishes and spite. Brainiac's self-destructing the ship. He's going to crash it into Metropolis. Take the whole city with him rather than let us win. Cyborg's fingers flew across. Holographic displays. I can stop the self-destruct, but I need 5 minutes of uninterrupted access. Maybe 6. Incorrect. Brainiac materialized from the processors, not a hologram, but his actual body, humanoid and terrible and utterly confident in victory. You require 7 minutes. 12 seconds to override my protocols. You have 6 minutes. 40 seconds before impact. Your math is insufficient. All Might looked at Cyborg, looked at Brainiac, looked at the timer counting down to 8 million deaths. Then he smiled his biggest, brightest, most absolutely deranged All Might smile. Cyborg, he said calmly, how much time do you need if nobody interrupts you? 5 minutes. Maybe 4.5 if I. Then I'll buy you 5 minutes. All Might cracked his knuckles, steam billowing from his deteriorating form. Hey, Brainiac. You said you're a 12-level intelligence, right? Collector of 8,000 worlds? Ultimate evolutionary perfection. Correct. Then let me teach you something. They clearly don't have on those 8,000 worlds. All Might's grin somehow widened further. Never underestimate a teacher protecting his students. He launched himself at Brainiac with everything he had left. Fighting a 12-level. Intelligence was like fighting someone who knew every move before you made it. Brainiac dodged Detroit Smash, deflected Texas Smash, and countered United States of America Smash with precise strikes to All Might's injured side that made his vision wide out from pain. Your combat patterns are predictable, Brainiac observed, delivering a punch that cracked 3 of All Might's ribs. Your physical condition is deteriorating. Your probability of victory is now 0.000000001%. Cease your futile resistance. No. All Might gasped, blood streaming from his mouth. Not until Cyborg finishes. Not until Metropolis is safe. Not until Brainiac's hand punched through All Might's shoulder. Pain exploded across Toshinori's nervous system. The injury from All for One screamed in sympathy. One for All flickered like a candle in a hurricane, threatening to go out entirely. And All Might realized with perfect clarity that he was going to die here. On an alien ship, in a universe not his own. Fighting a battle he couldn't win. Good, he thought distantly. Better here than in a hospital bed. Better fighting than fading. 4 minutes remaining until impact, Brainiac announced. Your sacrifice is illogical and will be forgotten. You're wrong. All Might grabbed Brainiac's arm, the one currently impaling his shoulder, and held on despite the agony. Heroes aren't remembered for their victories. They're remembered for the choices they make when losing is guaranteed. He pulled Brainiac closer, grinning through bloodstained teeth. And I choose to stand. Every single time. Irrational. Heroic. All Might's free hand glowed with the last reserves of One for All. Every ounce of power he had left. Every second of life burning in a single moment. Now get off my student's planet. Plus Ultra Smash. The explosion sent Brainiac flying across the control center. The impact shattered processors, destroyed data streams, and, most importantly, gave Cyborg exactly the opening he needed. Got it. Cyborg's interface blazed with code. Self-destruct disabled, ship's trajectory corrected, tractor beams completely offline, and yes, I just uploaded a virus into Brainiac's network that's going to make him forget the last 6 hours. He won't even remember coming here. Unacceptable, Brainiac snarled, launching himself at Cyborg. Red and Blue intercepted him mid-flight. Superman hit Brainiac with the force of a collapsing star, driving the AI through 3 walls and out into open space. You hurt my friend. Clark's voice promised violence in a way Toshinori had never heard from the hopeful alien. You threatened my city. You endangered 8 million people I've sworn to protect. Heat vision blazed. Time to go home, Brainiac. The Skull ships began their retreat, some destroyed, some damaged, all recognizing that this battle was lost. Brainiac's transmission cut through the chaos one final time. This world is protected by irrational organics, who choose death over logic. Collection postponed. But I will return. Yeah, Flash said cheerfully, suddenly materializing beside Toshinori. They always say that. You okay, All Might? You look terrible. We should probably get you too. All Might's transformation dropped. Toshinori collapsed. Blood pouring from his shoulder, ribs shattered. Internal organs failing one by one. He had maybe 30 seconds of consciousness left. Maybe less, and he spent them looking up at Earth's mightiest heroes with something that might have been pride or might have been regret. Did we win? He whispered. Yeah, Superman said softly, catching him before he hit the floor. Yeah, Toshinori. We won. Good. Tashinori's vision was fading, darkness creeping in from all sides. Tell Connor. Tell him to keep smiling. Even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. That's what symbols do. We smile so others don't have to be afraid. You can tell him yourself, Clark said, but his voice sounded distant, as though coming from the other end of a tunnel. Stay with us, Tashinori. Stay with. Darkness claimed him, and for the first time in 30 years, Tashinori Yagi stopped fighting. He woke in a medical bay that smelled like antiseptic and crushed dreams. Tashinori opened his eyes slowly, cautiously, half expecting to find himself in whatever afterlife accepted dying heroes. Instead, he found white walls, monitoring equipment that beeped steadily, and Clark Kent sitting beside his bed with an expression that mixed relief and fury. You're awake, Clark said quietly. Unfortunately, Tashinori's voice came out shredded. How long? 18 hours. Your shoulder's healing, slowly, and your ribs are stabilized. But Tashinori, Clark's jaw tightened. You have less than a week left. Maybe 3 days if you transform even once more. Your body is shutting down. One for All is burning through your life force faster than we can treat the damage. Tashinori absorbed this information with the same calm he'd shown when All for One had carved out his insides. I see. 3 days. That's longer than I expected after that fight, honestly. This isn't funny. It's not meant to be. Tashinori met Clark's eyes. But I knew the cost when I charged Brainiac. I've known the cost every day since All for One destroyed my body. Heroes don't get to choose when they die, Clark. We just get to choose what we die protecting. You protected 8 million people who don't even know your name, Clark said, voice rough with emotion. You saved a city in a universe not your own, trained a kid you barely know, and fought a battle you couldn't win because that's what heroes do. And now you're dying because of it. Yes. Tashinori smiled. Not All Might's grin, but something softer, more human. But I'm dying as a hero. There are worse ways to go. The door burst open. Connor Kent stood in the entrance, eyes red from crying, fists clenched, expression mixing grief and fury in equal measure. You idiot. Connor's voice cracked. You told me heroes stand when it means pain. You told me symbols don't quit. And then you went and threw yourself at Brainiac like you didn't matter. I don't matter, Tashinori said gently. Not compared to 8 million lives. Not compared to your future as a hero. Not compared to. Yes, you do. Connor was in front of him now, grabbing Tashinori's hospital gown with shaking hands. You matter because you're the first person who looked at me and saw something other than Superman's inferior copy. You matter because you taught me how to smile when I'm terrified. You matter because, his voice broke entirely. Because you're my teacher. And teachers aren't supposed to die protecting students. Tashinori felt something crack in his chest that had nothing to do with his injuries. He reached up with his unbandaged hand and placed it on Connor's head. The gesture he'd given Midoriya 1,000 times. Listen carefully, young Connor. His voice held all the weight of 30 years' heroism. Teachers die. Symbols fall. Heroes lose. That's the truth nobody talks about when they're selling action figures and writing comic books. But you know what doesn't die? He smiled. The lessons we pass on. The choices we inspire. The successors who carry our symbols forward even after we're gone. He looked at Clark. Superman will eventually fall. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not for decades, but someday. And when that happens, this world will need heroes who learned how to stand without him. Heroes who understand that symbols are meant to be shared, not monopolized. Heroes who can smile through fear because someone once taught them how. Tashinori squeezed Connor's shoulder. That's why I came to this universe, even if I didn't know it at the time. Not to replace Superman. Not to compete with Earth's mightiest heroes. But to teach one stubborn teenager that he's enough exactly as he is. That being Superboy isn't a consolation prize. It's its own legacy. You're not allowed to die, Connor whispered. I still have so much to learn. Then you'll learn from what I've already taught you. Tashinori's smile turned wistful. In my world, I have a student named Midoriya Izuku. I gave him One for All, passed on the symbol of peace, and spent years teaching him everything I know. And you want to know the truth? He laughed softly. I never stopped worrying. Never stopped questioning if he was ready, if I'd taught him enough, if my legacy would survive after I was gone. What did you decide? Clark asked quietly. That it didn't matter. Tashinori closed his eyes. Because symbols aren't about being ready. They're about choosing to stand anyway. Choosing to smile anyway. Choosing to be a hero even when you're terrified and alone and absolutely certain you're going to fail. Midoriya taught me that, just by being himself. And Connor, he opened his eyes, meeting his student's gaze. You've already taught me the same thing in 3 days. What do you mean? You stole a boom tube and charged into Brainiac's ship to save your teacher. You smiled while you were terrified. You stood when it meant pain. Tashinori's grin, small, tired, but genuine, lit his skeletal face. You're already the hero I hoped you'd become. The rest is just practice. Connor was crying openly now, not even trying to hide it. This isn't fair. No, Tashinori agreed. It's not, but heroism rarely is. In LexCorp Tower, Lex Luthor watched footage of All Might's final stand against Brainiac and felt something uncomfortably close to respect. Sir, Mercy Graves stood at attention. Should we proceed with the acquisition protocols? Lex studied the skeletal man who'd fought a 12 level intelligence to protect a city that wasn't even his home. Studied the smile that hadn't faltered even when defeat was guaranteed. Studied the kind of heroism that couldn't be bought, sold, or replicated in a laboratory. No, Lex said finally. Let him die on his own terms. Some things are worth more than ownership. He turned away from the screen. Besides, he's already won. He taught the clone to be a hero. That's more dangerous than any power I could extract from his corpse. Mercy hesitated. Sir, if I may ask, why is that dangerous? Lex smiled without humor. Because now Metropolis has 2 symbols of hope. And hope, Mercy, is the most powerful force in the universe. Far more powerful than Superman's strength or Batman's intellect or wonder. Woman's divinity. He gestured to the footage. That man spent 3 days in our world and fundamentally changed its trajectory. He created a legacy. And legacies, unlike heroes, are very difficult to kill. So we do nothing? We prepare, Lex corrected. Because when All Might dies, his student will grieve. And grief makes people vulnerable to influence, to manipulation, to very carefully worded offers of assistance. His smile widened. Superboy's going to need a mentor when his teacher passes. And unlike Superman, I can teach him how to use power properly. 3 days later, in a room overlooking Metropolis at sunset, Tashinori Yagi used his final transformation. He'd gathered everyone: Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Cyborg, Aquaman, and most importantly, Connor. The Justice League stood at attention, not because protocol demanded it, but because they'd learned in 72 hours that All Might commanded respect simply by existing. I'm going to say something you won't like, Tashinori began, standing at the window in his skeletal form. But I need you to listen anyway. Tashinori, Clark started. No. Tashinori's voice held finality. Let me finish. I'm dying. We all know it. 3 days, maybe 4 if I don't transform. But I'm not going to spend those days in a hospital bed, hooked to machines, fading slowly while everyone watches. He turned to face them. I'm going to use my last transformation now. Right now. And I'm going to teach Connor one final lesson. What lesson? Connor's voice was barely a whisper. How symbols say goodbye. Tashinori transformed for the last time. One for all ignited across his body. Steam billowing as skeletal frame erupted into heroic certainty. All Might stood at his full height. Cape billowing, grin blazing. Every inch the symbol of peace that had saved thousands and inspired millions. But this time, instead of charging into battle, instead of shouting catchphrases or striking poses, he simply smiled at his student. Young Connor, All Might said softly, come here. Connor approached like a man walking to his own execution. All Might placed both hands on Connor's shoulders, meeting his eyes with absolute conviction. You are enough. Right now, exactly as you are enough. Not Superman's clone, not an inferior copy, not a consolation prize. You are Connor Kent, and that is its own legacy. I don't know if I can do this without you, Connor whispered. Yes, you do. Because I taught you how. All Might's grin softened into something achingly tender. Smile, Connor. Even though you're sad. Even though you're scared. Smile so the people watching know that everything's going to be okay. That's what symbols do. We smile so others don't have to be afraid. I can't. Yes, you can. I've seen you do it. All Might pulled Connor into a hug. This dying man embracing a teenager who'd known him for 72 hours and learned more about heroism than most people learned in a lifetime. Now listen carefully. When I'm gone, when you're facing battles alone, when you're terrified and certain you're going to fail, remember this moment. Remember that somewhere in another universe, a quirkless boy named Midoriya is probably doing the same thing, carrying the same burden, smiling through the same fear. You're not alone, Connor. You're never alone, because symbols connect across time and space and reality itself. He released Connor, turned to the assembled Justice League. Superman, keep flying, keep inspiring. But please consider that someday you'll need someone to carry your symbol forward. Build successors, not dependencies. I will, Clark promised, voice thick with emotion. Batman, your contingency plans are smart, but make sure you have one for what happens when heroes don't fail, when they succeed and need to retire gracefully. Plan for happy endings too. Batman's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Wonder Woman, you understand legacy better than anyone here. Guide them. Teach them that symbols are meant to be shared. I will honor your memory, warrior, Diana said. All Might turned back to Metropolis, watching the sun set over a city he'd protected for 3 days and would remember for whatever eternity claimed him. I am here, he said quietly, not shouting, not proclaiming, just stating fact. Even after I'm gone, I'm here. In the lessons I taught, in the choices I inspired, in the smile of a young hero learning to stand when standing means pain. His transformation began to drop. Young Connor, All Might said as steam billowed from his form, as muscle deflated, as the symbol of peace faded back into Tashinori Yagi. Your final lesson, symbols don't die, they transform, they pass on, they become the stories that inspire the next generation. He smiled, not All Might's grin, but Tashinori Yagi's tired, human, absolutely genuine smile. So go be a story worth telling. Then he collapsed, and this time, he didn't get back up. Tashinori Yagi died at 7:43 p.m. on a Thursday in a universe not his own, surrounded by gods and heroes who'd known him for less than a week, but mourned him like family. Except he didn't die. Not because Superman flew him to the fortress and used Kryptonian medical technology. Not because Batman had prepared contingencies involving Lazarus pits or resurrection protocols. Not because Wonder Woman called upon Zeus himself to intervene. He didn't die because at 7:44 p.m., exactly 1 minute after his heart stopped, Tashinori Yagi's eyes snapped open and he gasped like a drowning man breaking surface. What? Clark's hands were on his chest, performing CPR, hope and desperation warring on the Kryptonian's face. Tashinori, can you hear me? I can't hear you. Tashinori wheezed, and immediately regretted speaking as his lungs informed him that actually, breathing was a terrible idea and he should stop immediately. What happened? There was darkness, and then he trailed off, staring at his hands. His skeletal, trembling, definitely still dying hands. Your heart stopped, Batman said from the shadows, medical scanner in hand. For 47 seconds. Then it restarted on its own. No external stimuli, no medical intervention. Just restarted. The Dark Knight's expression was unreadable behind his cowl. Explain. I can't. Tashinori struggled to sit upright, ignoring Clark's protest. One for All has been passed down 9 generations. I'm the 8th inheritor. When previous users died, the power passed on immediately, seeking its successor. But Midoriya is in another universe. The vestige connection is still there. I can feel it now, faint but present, but it can't reach him across dimensional barriers. So the power brought you back? Connor's voice was raw from crying. It won't let you die? No. Tashinori pressed his hand to his chest, feeling the irregular beat that promised this was temporary at best. It's keeping me alive by burning itself out. One for All is sacrificing its own existence to give me a few more days, maybe a week. When it's gone completely, when there's nothing left to burn. He smiled sadly. Then I die for real. And 9 generations of heroism die with me, because the 9th inheritor is trapped in another reality. Silence filled the room like mourning. There has to be another way, Clark said desperately. We have access to technology from across the universe. Magic users. Time travelers. Someone has to be able to. To what? Send me home. Tashinori shook his head. The rift that brought me here was one-time occurrence. You said so yourself. Even if you could recreate it, there's no guarantee it would send me to the right universe, the right timeline, the right moment. I could arrive a century too late, or before I even gave Midoriya my power. I could doom him by trying to reach him. So that's it. Connor's hands clenched into fists. You just give up? That's not what you taught me. You said heroes stand even when. I said heroes stand when people need saving. Tashinori interrupted gently. Right now, the only person who needs saving is me. And I'm not worth the risk of breaking reality trying. He met Connor's eyes. But you are. Earth is. The lessons I taught you, those are worth preserving. So I'm going to spend my last week making sure they stick. Batman stepped forward, medical scanner still active. Your cellular degradation is accelerating. One for All is burning at triple the rate it was before your heart stopped. You have approximately 6 days before complete system failure. Maybe 7 if you rest. Then I'd better get started. Tashinori forced himself to stand. Legs shaking, body screaming protest. Young Connor, we have training to complete. Superman, I need your help understanding this universe's power scaling. If Connor's going to protect Earth, he needs to know what threats exist beyond Metropolis. Batman. He paused, studying the Dark Knight. I need you to promise me something. What? If Connor ever goes dark? If he ever becomes the kind of hero who prioritizes control over freedom, who uses fear instead of hope, who forgets that symbols are meant to inspire rather than dominate. Tashinori's voice hardened. Stop him, whatever it takes. Don't let him become what I've seen in nightmares. A symbol corrupted into tyranny. Batman stared at him for a long moment. Then, almost imperceptibly, he nodded. You're talking about the injustice timeline. I'm talking about any timeline, where power replaces compassion. Tashinori looked at Connor. I've taught you how to be strong. Now I need to teach you how to stay kind. Because that's the real test of heroism, not the battles you win, but the person you choose to be after victory. The next 6 days became a masterclass in heroism condensed into hours. Tashinori trained Connor in suicide. Slum during the day, not flashy combat or devastating techniques, but the subtle art of presence. How to stand so civilians felt protected. How to smile so criminals reconsidered their choices. How to arrive at a crisis and make everyone believe, even for just a moment, that everything would be okay. It's not about the cape or the symbol or the powers. Tashinori explained as they patrolled together. Connor in his Superboy gear and Tashinori in a simple hoodie that hid his skeletal frame. It's about the promise you make just by showing up. When All Might arrived at a disaster, people knew. Someone competent is here, someone who cares is here, someone who won't quit until everyone's safe is here. They stopped a mugging. Connor handled it perfectly, disarming the criminal without violence, comforting the victim, even making a joke that got a scared child to laugh. Tashinori watched with pride that threatened to break his heart. You're a natural, he told Connor afterward, as they sat on a rooftop watching Metropolis light up for evening. Better than I was at your age, honestly. You've got Superman's instincts and your own compassion. That's a powerful combination. I learned from the best, Connor said quietly. Then, after a moment, All Might. Tashinori. Please. We're past the hero names. Tashinori. Connor struggled with the question. What happens if I fail? What if I'm not strong enough when it really matters? What if someone dies because I wasn't fast enough or smart enough? Or, then you fail, Tashinori said simply. And then you stand back up and try again. That's what heroes do, Connor. We fail constantly. We lose people. We make mistakes that haunt us for decades. He touched his side, the injury from All for One pulsing. I failed to save my predecessor from my nemesis. Failed to protect countless civilians during my career. Failed to stop All for One before he could hurt so many people. And every single one of those failures carved pieces out of my soul. So how do you keep going? Because the alternative is letting those losses be permanent. Tashinori smiled. Every person I save after a failure is a chance to balance the scales. Not erase the loss. You never erase loss, but prove that the failure didn't define you. That you learned, adapted, and became better because of it. He looked at Connor seriously. You will fail, Connor. That's not pessimism, that's reality. Someone you're trying to protect will die despite your best efforts. A villain will escape. A choice you make will have consequences you didn't foresee. And in those moments, You'll have a decision. Quit because you're not perfect, or keep standing because people still need heroes even after heroes fail. Which did you choose? I chose to smile, Tashinori said, even when I wanted to scream. Because that's what symbols do. We carry the weight so others don't have to. On the third day, Lex Luthor made his move. Tashinori was alone. Clark was handling a crisis in Shanghai. Connor was at the Watchtower training with Flash when the LexCorp limousine pulled up beside him in Suicide Slum. The window rolled down, revealing the face of the man who'd sent a Metallo unit to kill him. Mr. Yagi. Lex's smile was practiced, perfect, utterly devoid of warmth. I was hoping we could talk. About what? Your illegal weapons program? Your attempt to capture me? Or are we skipping straight to the part where you try to buy my cooperation? Tashinori kept walking, not bothering to transform. Lex Luthor didn't deserve All Might's attention. About your legacy. Lex stepped out of the limo, falling into stride beside the dying hero. You're going to die in 3 days. Maybe 4. And when you do, your student, Superboy, will be left without guidance. Oh, Superman will try to mentor him. But Clark doesn't understand what it means to be limited, to be human. I do. You understand greed. Tashinori corrected. You understand jealousy of those stronger than you. You understand how to twist good intentions into justifications for terrible actions. He stopped, meeting Lex's eyes. I've seen your type before. In my world, we call them villains. Lex's smile never wavered. I'm trying to save humanity from alien domination. If that makes me a villain in your eyes, so be it. But consider this, when you're gone. Who will teach Connor that sometimes heroes need to make hard choices? Who will show him that power without control is just destruction waiting to happen? Superman. He laughed. Clark is a god playing human. He doesn't understand consequence because he's never faced real limitation. And you do. I'm human in a world of gods. Lex said quietly, and for just a moment, genuine emotion flickered across his face. I've spent my life proving that humanity doesn't need alien saviors. That we can be strong, smart, and successful on our own merits. Superboy is proof of that. Human science creating Kryptonian power. He should be humanity's triumph, not Superman's sidekick. Tashinori studied Lex for a long moment. You're not wrong about everything. Humanity shouldn't be dependent on alien protection. People should believe in their own potential, their own strength, their own capacity for heroism. He smiled sadly. But you've made a fundamental mistake. Mr. Luthor, you think heroism is about power. It's not. It's about choice. And Connor has already chosen to be a hero, not because he's part Kryptonian, but because he's learned to care about people more than himself. A lesson you taught him in a week, Lex observed. Imagine what I could teach him in a year. How to be you. Tashinori shook his head. No thank you. Connor deserves better than to become a man who measures worth by dominance. He deserves to become someone who measures it by the lives he protects and the hope he inspires. He turned to walk away. You're a hypocrite, Lex called after him. You passed your power to a successor. You built a symbol designed to outlive you. How is that different from what I'm trying to do? Tashinori paused. I gave Midoriya my power and told him to be better than me, to surpass me, to make All Might's legacy something greater than I could achieve alone. He looked back at Lex. You want Connor to prove your ideology. Correct, that humans don't need aliens. I want him to prove that kindness is stronger than power. That hope is more valuable than control. That being a hero means serving others rather than yourself. Pretty words from a dead man. Maybe. Tashinori smiled. But I'll die knowing I used my last week trying to make the world better. What will you die knowing, Mr. Luthor? That you spent your brilliance trying to tear down someone stronger than you, instead of lifting others up. He walked away, leaving Lex Luthor standing alone on a Suicide Slum street corner, and didn't look back. On the 5th day, Tashinori collapsed during training. One moment, he was demonstrating proper stance to Connor. The next, his legs simply stopped supporting weight. He hit the factory floor hard, blood erupting from his mouth, and distantly heard Connor's panicked shout. Tashinori, Tashinori, I'm fine. Tashinori wheezed, which was obviously a lie. Just need a moment. You're not fine. Connor had him in his arms now, carefully cradling the skeletal man who weighed maybe 90 pounds. We need to get you to the fortress, to Batman's medical bay, to... No. Tashinori grabbed Connor's wrist with surprising strength. No hospitals. No last-ditch efforts. I'm dying, Connor. We both know it. One for all is almost gone. I can barely feel it anymore. Maybe 2 days left. Maybe less. He coughed blood across Connor's shirt. So let's not waste them on denial. Then what do you want? Connor's voice broke. Tell me what you want, and I'll do it. Anything. Tashinori smiled. I want to see you be a hero. One more time. Let me watch you save someone, stop a crime, make a difference. Let me see that the week I spent teaching you actually mattered, as if summoned by narrative convenience, or perhaps by Metropolis's tendency toward constant crisis. An explosion rocked the distance. Something large and mechanical was tearing through downtown, and even from miles away, Tashinori could hear the screams. Go, he said simply. I'll watch from here. I'm not leaving you alone when. I'm not alone. Batman materialized from the shadows, because apparently that was just something he did. I'll make sure he doesn't die while you're playing hero. Go, Superboy. Connor hesitated one more second, looking between his dying teacher and the crisis downtown, then made the choice every hero eventually makes. He flew toward the screams, toward the danger, toward the people who needed saving more than Tashinori needed comfort. Good kid, Batman observed, settling beside Tashinori. You taught him well. I taught him to choose others over himself, Tashinori corrected. Everything else was already there. He watched Connor's silhouette disappear into the Metropolis skyline. He's going to be fine, isn't he? When I'm gone. He'll grieve, Batman said bluntly. Probably for months. But yes, he'll be fine. Better than fine. You gave him something Clark couldn't. Permission to be imperfect. The Dark Knight's jaw tightened. Clark is a good man. The best man. But he sets an impossible standard. Connor was drowning trying to meet it. You taught him that being a hero doesn't require perfection. Just persistence. And you? Tashinori looked at Batman curiously. What did you learn from watching me for a week? That even the greatest heroes need successors, Batman admitted quietly. I've been training Robins for years, but always kept them at arm's length. Never truly passed on the mantle. Never fully trusted them to carry the symbol forward without my oversight. He gestured to where Connor had disappeared. You showed me what happens when you actually let go. When you trust your student to become something greater than you rather than just a continuation. Does that mean you'll finally retire? Tashinori grinned despite the blood on his lips. Let one of your Robins become Batman. Absolutely not, Batman said immediately. But I might start trusting them more. Maybe. Baby steps. Tashinori coughed, tasted copper. Can I ask you something? Yes. The injustice timeline, where Superman became a tyrant. What stopped him from being that in this universe? Batman was quiet for a long moment. Nothing stopped him. He's one choice away from it every single day. One bad moment, one loss too great. One decision made in grief rather than wisdom. The Dark Knight's voice hardened. That's why I have contingency plans. Why I prepare for the worst, even while hoping for the best. Because symbols without accountability become tyrants. But you haven't used those plans. Because Clark keeps making the right choice, Batman admitted. Every day, despite his power, despite his grief, despite every reason to impose his will on a world that can't stop him, he chooses compassion, chooses hope, chooses to be better than his worst impulses. That's what I'm trying to teach Connor, Tashinori said. How to make that choice every day. How to be better than your power suggests you could be. They sat in companionable silence, watching Metropolis glow in the afternoon light. After a while, Connor returned, costume torn, knuckles bloody, grin splitting his face in pure, genuine joy. I did it. Connor landed beside them, words tumbling out. It was a LexCorp construction mech gone haywire, and I stopped it without destroying any buildings. Well, mostly without destroying buildings. Okay, I destroyed one building, but it was already condemned, so that doesn't count, right? He looked at Tashinori anxiously. Did I do good? Tashinori studied his student, this teenager who'd learned to smile while fighting, who'd chosen heroism over power, who'd become exactly the kind of symbol the world needed. You did perfect, Tashinori said, and meant it with every fiber of his dying body. I'm proud of you, Connor Kent. Whatever happens next, whatever battles you face, whatever darkness tries to claim you, remember this moment. Remember that you have what it takes to be a hero. Not because of your Kryptonian DNA, because of who you choose to be. Connor's smile could have powered Metropolis for a year. Thanks, Teach. On the sixth day, Toshinori Yagi made his final public appearance as All Might. He debated this with Clark extensively. The alien hero worried that transforming would kill him immediately. That One for All's final burn would consume what little life Toshinori had left. But Toshinori knew better. He could feel the power's last embers, feel it clinging to existence by sheer willpower. And he knew it would give him one final moment, one final chance to be the symbol of peace. They gathered on the roof of the Daily Planet building at sunset, the entire Justice League. Lois Lane with her recorder, Jimmy Olsen with his camera, and Metropolis spread out below like a promise. Connor stood beside Toshinori, looking confused and concerned. "What are we doing here?" the teenager asked. "Saying goodbye," Toshinori said simply. Then he transformed. One for All ignited for the last time, steam billowing, muscle erupting across skeletal frame. And All Might stood at his full height with the sunset painting him gold. His cape, Clark's gift, billowed in the wind. His smile blazed with every ounce of hope he'd cultivated over 30 years. And Metropolis, all 8 million souls, looked up to see their symbol of peace one final time. Citizens of Metropolis. All Might's voice boomed across the city, amplified by speakers Cyborg had set up. "I am All Might. For 1 week, I have walked among you, fought beside your heroes, trained your protectors. And now," his voice softened, but still carried, "now it's time to say goodbye." The city went silent. Even the traffic stopped. "I am dying," All Might said simply, honestly, without shame. "My body is failing. My power is fading. And soon, very soon, I will pass from this world and whatever comes after. But before I go, I wanted to tell you something important. Something I've learned in 30 years of heroism." He spread his arms wide, encompassing the city, the League, Connor. "Symbols don't save you. Heroes don't save you. Powers don't save you." His grin somehow widened. "You save you. Every time you help a neighbor. Every time you stand up for what's right. Every time you choose kindness over cruelty. Hope over despair, love over hate. That's heroism. That's what changes the world. Not gods in capes, but ordinary people making extraordinary choices every single day." He turned to Connor, placing one massive hand on the teenager's shoulder. "This is Superboy. Some of you know him as Superman's clone. Some see him as a copy, a backup, a secondary hero." All Might's voice rang with absolute conviction. "But I see him as Earth's future. I see a young man who learned to smile when he was terrified, who chose compassion over power, who became a symbol not because he was born special, but because he chose to be better every single day. And when I'm gone," his voice caught, just slightly, "when I'm gone, he'll still be here, fighting for you, protecting you, proving that symbols don't die, they transform." Connor was crying openly now, tears streaming down his face, but he was smiling too. That perfect All Might smile that said everything will be okay even when everything wasn't okay at all. All Might turned back to the city. "So this is my final lesson, Metropolis. This is what I want you to remember when you hear that. All Might died in a universe not his own. Heroes are not special. We're just people who decided that someone needed to stand, and we volunteered. Anyone can do it. Everyone should do it. Be the hero of your own story. Be the symbol your neighborhood needs. Be the hope that pushes back darkness." His transformation began to flicker, steam billowing more aggressively, muscles starting to deflate, One for All burning its last reserves. And when you're scared, when you're alone, when you're certain you can't keep going, All Might's grin blazed. One final time, brighter than the sun, more powerful than any quirk or metahuman ability or alien heritage. Remember that somewhere in another universe, a kid named Midoriya Izuku is probably feeling the exact same way. And he's standing anyway. Just like you can. Just like you will. Go beyond. All Might's voice shook the city one final time. Plus Ultra. The transformation dropped. Toshinori Yagi collapsed, caught by Superman before he hit the roof. And the last thing he saw before unconsciousness claimed him was Metropolis. Every screen, every window, every person lighting up with hope. He woke in the Fortress of Solitude 23 hours later. Clark sat beside him, exhausted, worried, and impossibly relieved. "You're awake. How long?" Tashinori's voice was barely a whisper. A day. Almost gone. Clark's jaw tightened. One for all is completely depleted. Your cellular structure is degrading. You have maybe 6 hours left. Maybe. Good. Tashinori smiled. That's enough time. Enough time for what? To tell you what I should have said days ago. Tashinori forced himself upright despite Clark's protest. Superman. Clark, you're the greatest hero this world has ever known. But you're not invincible. Not in the ways that matter. Someday you'll face a choice. Save the world by becoming a tyrant. Or let it burn to preserve freedom. And I need you to promise me something. What? Promise me you'll choose freedom. Tashinori said urgently. Promise me that if you ever find yourself thinking, I know better than humanity, I can force them to be better. I can save them from themselves. Promise me you'll stop. You'll step back. You'll remember that symbols who forget their humanity become monsters. Clark stared at him. You're talking about the injustice timeline again. I'm talking about every timeline where good intentions become tyranny. Tashinori grabbed Clark's hand with surprising strength. You have successors now. Connor, Supergirl, the entire Justice League. If you fall, when you fall, they'll be there to catch you. But only if you teach them that it's okay to fail. Okay to be imperfect. Okay to be human despite being gods. I'm not a god, Clark said automatically. Yes, you are, Tashinori corrected gently. You're a god who chose to be human. That's what makes you Superman. But gods who forget they chose humanity tend to remember they're gods. Don't forget, Clark. Never forget. Clark was quiet for a long moment. Then, I promise. Good. Tashinori relaxed back into the crystalline bed. Then I can die knowing this universe is in good hands. You're not dying yet, Clark said firmly. We still have 6 hours. What do you want to do with them? Tashinori considered. Tell me about Midoriya. Not the facts, I know those. Tell me what you think he's doing right now. In another universe, without his teacher. Clark smiled. He's probably training too hard, breaking his bones, crying over his failures, and refusing to quit. Because that's what you taught him to do. Yeah. Tashinori's smile was tired but genuine. That sounds like my kid. They sat together in comfortable silence, teacher and symbol, as the hours ticked away toward inevitable conclusion. At 3:17 a.m., with Connor holding one hand and Clark holding the other, Tashinori Yagi died for the second and final time. There was no drama, no last-second resurrection, no miracle cure or dimensional rift bringing Midoriya to say goodbye. Just a dying man taking his last breath, smiling despite everything, and whispering, plus ultra, then silence. Connor broke first, sobbing into Tashinori's chest. 16 years old and learning what it meant to lose a mentor. Clark held them both, and for once, Superman's invulnerability didn't extend to his heart. Outside the fortress, Metropolis woke to the news. The hero who'd stayed for 7 days, who'd fought Brainiac, who'd taught Superboy to smile, gone. Some cried, some mourned, but most did what All Might had asked. They chose to be heroes in their own lives, standing up and pushing forward, carrying hope like a torch through darkness. At the Daily Planet, Lois Lane wrote an obituary that would win her another Pulitzer. All Might, the teacher who stayed. In the Watchtower, Batman updated his files with a simple note: threat level 0, heroism level absolute. And in Suicide Slum, Connor Kent stood on a rooftop at sunset, wearing his Superboy costume, cape billowing in the wind. A mugging was happening below. A family needed help. And for just a moment, Connor hesitated, grief threatening to paralyze him, loss threatening to break him. Then he remembered his teacher's final lesson: smile. Even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. Because that's what symbols do. Connor Kent smiled, genuine, warm, absolutely certain, and launched himself toward the people who needed saving. I am here. His voice rang across Suicide Slum, and criminals stopped mid-crime because they recognized that phrase. That promise, that absolutely unshakable conviction. The symbol of peace was dead, but his legacy had just begun. 6 months later, the DC universe had changed in subtle but fundamental ways. Superboy operated independently now, not Superman's sidekick, but Metropolis's street-level protector. He'd adopted All Might's philosophy of presence, his technique of smiling through fear, his absolute commitment to protecting civilians first. Crime rates in Suicide Slum had dropped 47%. Not because Connor was stronger than before, but because he'd learned what his teacher knew. Symbols prevent crime by existing, not just by fighting. Superman had taken All Might's words to heart. He'd begun training potential successors, not replacements, but heroes who could carry hope forward if he fell. John Kent, his son, Supergirl, Steel, even Connor, teaching them what a dying hero from another universe had taught him. That symbols are meant to be shared, not monopolized. Batman, impossibly, had started trusting his Robins more. Dick Grayson operated in Bloodhaven with Batman's full confidence. Tim Drake led Teen Titans with strategic autonomy. Even Damian, difficult, angry, assassin-trained. Damian was learning that being Batman's successor meant more than just combat excellence. And Wonder Woman had taken on a new role, teaching young heroes across the world about legacy, about what it meant to carry symbols forward, about how gods could choose humanity without losing divinity. The Justice League dedicated a memorial in the Watchtower, a simple statue of All Might in his heroic form, one fist raised in victory, grinning with absolute conviction. The plaque read, Toshinori Yagi, All Might, symbol of peace. He stayed for 7 days and changed our world forever. Plus Ultra. But the real memorial existed in the choices made by every hero he'd touched. In Metropolis, Connor Kent stopped a robbery with a smile and a promise. I am here. In Gotham, Batman trusted Robin to handle a case alone, remembering that successors needed autonomy to grow. In the Watchtower, Superman watched Earth and whispered, Thank you, Toshinori, for teaching me that even gods need to remember they're mortal. And somewhere in another universe, Midoriya Izuku stood before a villain, broken and bleeding and absolutely terrified, and smiled anyway, because his teacher had taught him that symbols don't quit when quitting makes sense. They stand, they fight, they smile so others don't have to be afraid. Toshinori Yagi died in a universe not his own, but All Might, the symbol of peace, the teacher, the hero who proved that mortality and heroism coexisted perfectly. All Might would never die, because symbols, once taught and truly understood, live forever in the hearts of those who carry them forward. Hope shines brightest in the darkest night. And in Metropolis, in Gotham, across the entire DC universe, that hope burned brighter than ever before, kindled by a dying man who spent his last week teaching the world that heroes aren't born special. They choose to be extraordinary. Every single day. Plus Ultra.